Welcome to Chatting Shit with Ostique, the podcast series where we chat about shit with inspirational people from all walks of life. Today we are joined by the wonderful and inspiring Oliver Kaye. We hope you enjoy this conversation. So Ollie, hi, welcome to Chatting Shit with Ostique.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So today's topic is all about teenage life with ulcerative colitis. And as we were saying just before we pushed record, it feels like you're one of the only people in this space talking about this, yet we know so many people suffer with this at this age. So thank you for speaking out and for being there for other people. And thank you for being on this podcast so we can delve into it a bit further.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So before we kind of kick off, would you mind talking a little bit about your journey with ulcerative colitis and perhaps sort of when you got diagnosed and what those symptoms looked like for you?
Yeah, so I guess my symptoms began in 2019. It was when it all started. It was all very mild. Like I had very mild weight loss, even though I was always quite a skinny, like teenager. I was always very skinny. I was very active. And then really, it's just I started to lose a bit of weight. I started to go. I wasn't even going to the toilet a bit more, but I was having loose stools. I was having a change in bowel habit, as they call it. It was just going on for a few months. So obviously I knew something wasn't quite right because it's been going on for 3-4 months. Now it wasn't my normal bowel habit, so I went to the GP, and obviously they said you can go to a specialist and they'll go check you out. So we did that. Eventually saw a specialist. They did some blood tests, and my inflammation came back high, which is an indicator of inflammatory bowel disease. And then they went ahead with the colonoscopy, where they, as I'm sure you all know, they did a scope of my digestive system, where they eventually came to the diagnosis of ulcerative colitis at the beginning of 2020. And yeah, it was still very mild when I was diagnosed. I was still going to school. I was still playing sport. It wasn't affecting my day-to-day life. It was obviously there. I was put on some medication, and they said, yeah, you'll be on this medication for the rest of your life, and hopefully that'll be it. But obviously that wasn't the case. I'm now with a stoma bag, which I'm sure we'll get into a bit more. Yeah, that's how my diagnosis came along.
So when did things, well, I guess you said that the medication wasn't necessarily working for you. So when did kind of symptoms worsen, or when did, I guess, the idea of stoma surgery come up and kind of get told to you?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed in January of the 2020, and it was really it was a few weeks later where unfortunately went downhill quite quickly. I was in hospital for weeks. I wasn't at school, and yeah, just trying all the different medications, the steroids, the biologics, the immunosuppressants, steroids, which I think I just said, but all the medications basically to try and get the inflammation and symptoms under control. So yeah, it was going on throughout 2020 through lockdown, and then the prospect of surgery came about April, May time, where the biologics and the harder medications weren't even having a small impact on me. So that's when the prospect of surgery really came. The idea came up, and then eventually in June of that same 2020, I had my stoma surgery. And yeah, I'm now 2 years living with a bag.
How did you feel when you were told that stoma surgery was probably the kind of only option for you to have a viable quality of life?
Yeah, I mean, I was upset. I mean, I cried in front of my doctor and my nurse. I think because I was just, even though I knew it could happen. Obviously, when they did say it's quite likely, it was just that. I don't know how to describe it. It was a shock. It was quite not surreal, but it was a big shock that it was going to change my life. I didn't know if I was going to be able to play sport. If my life was going to be the same. Again, I didn't know anyone, let alone my age, who has a stoma bag or even has ulcerative colitis. So it was all just because it was all very quick. It was all it was literally in the space of 5-6 months that everything happened. So it was a big shock, which was the main thing. Obviously, I was scared of the unknown. I didn't know was going to happen to my life, which was the scariest bit, I guess.
Of course. And I want to get kind of into what school life was like for you before and then after your stoma surgery. But
Mm.
in terms of sort of life in general, how was it once you'd had your
Yeah.
surgery versus how you thought it was going to impact your life?
Yeah, the outcome of the surgery is, actually, it's a hard one to say because I don't know what it would have been like, but it's definitely, my life now is a lot better than it was before. Um, I guess when I was going through, I wasn't really thinking about that. I wanted to get better. That was the
Mm.
main objective. Yeah, my quality of life now is definitely a lot better than when I was ill and before I had my colon at least. So yeah, it's quite a hard one to think back about what my expectations of the surgery were, because everything just happened in the moment so quickly. Um, yeah, my quality of life now is better than it was before, which is definitely a positive of the surgery. Yeah, I'm definitely great. I'm really grateful for that, all the work the doctors and surgeons did. So yeah.
So when you were in hospital with ulcerative colitis before the surgery, and then I assume you also had a period of time
Mm.
in hospital or certainly not at school once you'd had the surgery while you were recovering. What was
Mm.
that like for
Mm.
you? I guess there's a few kind of angles to it. There's the kind of actual school work side of things and how you manage that, but
Yeah,
then also how your friends were and how kind of the relationships were with the teachers. So I guess it was a lot for you to
yeah,
handle. What was that like?
yeah, yeah. It was difficult. Obviously, it was a difficult one because obviously the teachers hadn't had much experience with it. I didn't know anything about
Mm,
it. Both sides were just learning how best to deal with it at the same time. So that was difficult. But on the bit about how it affected my school life, I wouldn't say I was lucky, but half of my, I guess, when I was going through the surgery when I was really ill was during the lockdown. So we weren't actually in school for half of that anyway. So I was lucky in that sense. But a few months before lockdown, I was quite ill, like between
mm,
January and April time when lockdown was. I mean, I wasn't at school. Even when I went into school, I'll be in for half a day at most. And yeah, because I was either in hospital, or I was just too unwell to go in. So
yeah.
I think the teachers were really good. They were really understanding. They put in place whatever was needed to be put in place. If I needed extra support in classwork, which they did, and I was trying to do my English essays, English mocks in hospital,
Oh my god.
and they were sending stuff online, which was really good. And when I had my stoma surgery, which I guess it was during the summer holiday and slight during lockdown, so it wasn't like I'd missed school, but obviously everyone was behind in that sense. But
Yeah.
it was during the summer holiday, so it's a little bit different than missing school completely. But even when we started going to school in September, and I was still recovering from stoma surgery, it was difficult physically. It was tiring when you come out of major surgery. Just to go for a walk, up the street is tiring. It's knackering for your body. So physically, it was very hard getting back into school. But I think mentally was probably harder. You've got the bag. You think everyone's judging you like, oh my god, he's got his stoma bag. It's disgusting. But really, just I sort of just had to get on with it. It was hidden under my clothes.
Mm.
So obviously no one could see it. And if they knew about it, they probably just forgot I even had it because they were just going on with their day to day life. And yeah, my friends as well were really accepting. They were just happy to see me better. I could play football in the park with them. I could play football at school. Also couldn't go too hard at the start, so I was still recovering, which was difficult. So in my head, I was ready to do stuff, whereas physically I couldn't actually do it. So I'll try and run for 10 seconds, and I'll be knackered. Because mentally I was so much more active than I was physically. I think it's quite a hard challenge, especially when you're a young person going through stoma surgery, that you recover a lot quicker in terms of what you can do. In that sense, whereas physically you're like maybe a month or two behind where you are mentally, which was quite hard at school, like doing PE and playing sport out of school. Yeah, it was difficult, but I think it made me a stronger person.
In terms of, you mentioned that
Yeah,
if people didn't know, obviously they can't see it. If you're walking down the street, no one has a clue whether you have a stoma or not.
Yeah,
But in terms of kind of your friends, or maybe sort of, this peripheral peers that sort of know things, but you're not that close with them. How did you have any
yeah,
conversations with them about your stoma? And if so, how did you talk about it?
yeah,
And what did you like from people who spoke to you back about it? Like, what would a good piece
yeah.
of advice be to someone who is at school with someone who's had this surgery and wants to say something supportive? Like, what would be the right sort of thing to say?
Um, yeah. So obviously, people were asking. So I did set my Instagram account, so people did know obviously what I'd been through, and I've got a stoma bag. There's always people that are quite inquisitive. They're always asking questions like, why? I think it's more just educational questions, asking like why do you have this? What's it like and stuff like that. It wasn't like rude
Mm,
comments, luckily. But I think when people are interested in it, I think for me, because I like science and learning about the body and stuff, so I do enjoy people asking me about those type of questions like why did you have it, how are you feeling about it. So it did help me to speak about it and be a bit more confident with it. I think for everyone it's different, like how they respond to it and how they like people to, I guess, interact with them. I think some people may just want them to just treat them as if they didn't have the bag, which most of the time I prefer to have anyway. You just want to be a normal teenager and just you want to be normal. You want to be the average teenager with no problems at all. Yes, it is good when people do ask questions. I personally I don't mind. I like educating people as I do on my social media. I think if my advice, if people do want to speak to people with a stoma bag, it's just being understanding and being empathetic. It's not feeling sorry for them. I don't think it's definitely not feeling sorry. It's just if you are interested in it, I think you can ask questions, ask them if they're alright to answer it first, and then it's just being open between the two parties what they want to talk about and what you want to talk about. It's just finding that balance between. I didn't mind, as I said, answering all these questions. People had some weird questions
did they?
about the bag, but
What kind of thing?
all about the education. I don't know. It's like is your stoma like outside your body? Is it that because people seen that Mr. Colitis Crohn's guy on TikTok, and they're like, "Have you got the same thing as him? Have you got that thing as well?" And you're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And they're like, "Oh my god, I thought it was something completely different." It's just those sort of comments. So yeah, it does make you laugh sometimes.
I can imagine. You mentioned that you had your surgery during the pandemic. We've had a few people on the podcast who had surgery during the pandemic, and they said that they found it particularly difficult because they weren't allowed any visitors while they were having their surgery. Were you? I'm assuming
Yeah,
you were minor at the time, so were your parents allowed to come, or were you
yeah,
alone?
yeah. My mum had to stay with me. Yeah, so I wasn't alone in that sense, but my dad and sister weren't allowed in the hospital at all.
Oh wow.
So it's just me and my mum. My mum had to stay in the hospital, like one of the pull down beds in the wardrobe. But so I guess it was not lucky, but fortunate to have my mum in the room as well to keep me occupied
Mm.
and not annoy me too much. So yeah,
We know how
it
it's
was hard.
like.
You couldn't have any friends come visit, or you couldn't have anyone come visit apart from the nurses, doctors, whoever's working in the hospital. So that was definitely really
Yeah.
hard. I think you can't see anyone, you can't go out, you can't just go outside the hospital. That is really difficult. I think, especially if you are on your own, like it's just you in the hospital in that room. I think that's probably even harder. But yeah, it was really difficult. You couldn't even see friends or family.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah,
tough.
tough.
Um, you're clearly really open and incredible about your stoma and wanting to educate people on it, which is amazing. And I've rarely found sort of a post, and I've done a bit of stalking for this, and I've rarely found a post where you haven't been really positive. But I did see one where you spoke about how you find it hard sometimes in public with your stoma, and you reference like changing rooms or public restrooms. Can
Mm.
you tell me a bit about what those feelings are like, and then I guess how you handle those situations?
Yeah, so I think being open on social media is it's different to being open like physically in public.
Mm.
As you said, I find it difficult, if you're by a public swimming pool or like in a changing room. So I play a team sport, so you're in a changing room. I find it quite uncomfortable. If you're showing the bag, even if it's just a little, little people, I do find that quite
Mm.
difficult. Um, the way that I deal with it, I think it's just everyone on my team or everyone on my team at least knows that I do have a bag. But if you are in public, most people probably won't know you have the bag. Um, but even though I know that people aren't even going to notice it, not even going to remember that you have the bag, even if they do see it, I do always have in the back of my mind that if people are going to judge me, they're going to think less of me if they see my bag. So I guess the way that I deal with it, I wear a stoma support belt, which wraps around the waist and over the bag. Obviously, it's the same colour as if you're wearing shorts or if you're playing sport, it's on your clothes anyway. But if you are by a swimming pool, I wear a belt which is the same colour as my shorts, just so it feels more secure physically, but also I feel more comfortable. If people do look, at my stomach and they're not going to see the bag, I just feel more comfortable having it hidden. So I wear a belt, which does help massively when I'm in those public situations. But I do know that most of the time people aren't going to care you've got a bag or anything, or you've got scars, or even if there's anything else, any other medical conditions, where things can be seen on the outside. Most of the time, people don't even care that you've got it. They probably don't even recognise it. Obviously, it's always in the back of your mind when it's you in that body. Yeah, I wear a belt to deal with it. Um, and yeah, it's a difficult one. It's quite. I don't think you can get over it and deal with it. It's just something you have to learn to do. I think it's a difficult one to explain. Yeah,
No, I think you're
everyone has their own ways of doing it.
yeah, I think you're explaining it really well. And I think no matter what the topic or situation or whatever it is that we're speaking about, you're always in your own head about it far more than anyone else is actually
Yeah,
thinking about it. Because I always
mm,
find that most of the time people are so wrapped up in their own worlds that they're not even thinking about other people half the time anyway.
yeah,
But overcoming that kind of the mental block that you might have about something, whatever that thing might be, is always the biggest
yeah,
challenge. And I think having some practical tools to do that, so somebody can go and buy that belt and put that on, and it gives them that kind of feeling, almost
mm,
like a suit of armor, maybe that kind of just defensive line
yeah,
before, I think is a really useful practical tool. So thank you for sharing that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, for everyone, it's different how they deal with it. Obviously, that's just how I deal with it. I think wearing that belt, but yeah, I'll let you carry on. I interrupted you there.
no, no, no. I'm sorry. It's me blabbering on. Um, I have seen you post about the importance of removing stoma stigma, which obviously we
Yeah.
absolutely agree with. That's quite literally why Ostique exists. But I'd love you to tell me a bit about this, what it means to you, and what you think might be able to be done to address it and move that forward.
Yeah, it's a difficult one that like how we can. I don't think we can remove the stigma. Unfortunately, a lot with just in generally in society, removing things completely is never going to be the case. But I think the main thing is education.
Hmm.
Making people aware of stoma bags. Um, I mean, I haven't had it myself. I have it myself in airports. I had one example where I was going through airport security. Obviously, you go through the
Hmm.
scanner, they beep it, and something. I've got the stoma, and also I say to them before I've got a stoma, um, and also I go through and they pat me down. They're like, "What is this? What is this?" I was quite lucky. Some people get taken into like separate rooms. They have to take it off and investigate it completely. But for me, it was quite difficult trying to communicate what the bag was. Unfortunately, they didn't know what the stoma bag was. Most of the time, that was just a one-off time. Most of the time, they do know what it is, and they say, "Yeah, we've seen this loads of times." They do like a quick swab of it, and then they'll move you on quite easily. But just that's one example that came to my head
Mm.
of that sort of stigma that people don't understand or even know what a stoma bag is. So I think education definitely in those I guess jobs where you're going to come into contact with stoma bags, for example, those airport security. But I think they do, at least in the UK, they are very good at it.
That's good.
Um, I think most times I've been through, more often than not, they know what the bag is. quite they see it all the time, as I said. So education through social media, just through campaigns, even at schools. It's quite hard because it is fairly niche. But social media is probably the best way to educate because most people are on social media. It's a great way to reach as many people as possible. So education is probably the main way to do it to remove that stigma. And people being open, which a lot of people are doing a lot more and more in the moment. Got some big influences in that ostomy area, which has definitely helped remove some of that
Yeah.
stigma. Obviously, there is still a lot of stigma around stoma bags, but yeah, education is the main one. But I don't know, there's probably some small other ones around it. What like Ostique are doing, making people feel more confident, in their stoma bags to then speak out. It all links back, to education and just making people aware of stoma bags in different ways possible.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Social media, as you've mentioned, is an amazing tool for getting things out to lots of people in an amazing way. And for that, it's great. But there are some
Mm.
negative sides to social media. A lot of guests that we've had on the podcast have
Yeah.
experienced those themselves. And I wondered whether your platform has brought any of those negative sides of social media to the forefront. And if so, what what kinds of things have you experienced and how have you dealt with them? I'm hoping you're going to tell me none, but I suspect that might not be the case.
Yeah, it's not the case. I mean, I think I do have a big following, so I guess it is more likely you're going to have hate as well. Even if it's not a big following, you're as likely to get hate comments or ignorant comments. Unfortunately, I have had quite a lot of hate comments, mainly on TikTok,
Right.
is where it's mainly Instagram, not too much, but it does pop up every now and again. But TikTok is probably where it mainly does happen because it's where I get the most interaction, so you're more likely than not going to get that odd person that's going to say something. Yeah, TikTok is where I get a lot of those comments, and if you go through like my TikTok, you'll see in the comments things like, "Oh, that's disgusting! Like, why are you showing this? Doing this for attention." Those type of comments. But I think it is very ignorant. It's not just hate; it's more just it's ignorant. Obviously, people are hiding behind the anonymous profiles they're making. It's not their
Yeah.
actual name and identity, which doesn't help and makes it easier for people. And it's not just in with people with stoma bags. In all areas of society, people are getting hate. No matter what you're doing on social media, you're always going to get some sort of hate because of that identity problem. But yeah, unfortunately, I have had those hate comments. But I do. It does get to me. Obviously, it does when you've got that one hate comment. You've got maybe 50, 100 positive comments. That one hate comment is gonna
Stick with you.
it's gonna bold out a lot more than the positive ones, unfortunately. Yeah, it's difficult because there's not much you can do. You can't just not look at the comment. You're gonna read it and you are gonna process it. So it's difficult, but I think yeah, most people, as you said, the ones people you've spoken to, most of the people I've spoken to as well, and I've seen it. I've received quite a lot of ignorant and comments that aren't so nice,
Do
unfortunately.
you ever respond to the comments or do you choose to just ignore them and move on with your life?
Um, I normally do ignore it, um, but there are sometimes where it's not like a hate comment. It's like it's an ignorant comment. They don't understand. They're saying that comment because maybe they don't understand what's gone on. If there is that sort of comment, where it's saying like "ooh, what is that" or something, I will try and explain it and just try and educate. So they probably don't know what it is. They've probably seen it for the first time. They're going through TikTok, they're going through Instagram. They see a young person with a stoma bag and they're like, "Well, that doesn't look right," and then they'll say something. And also, it's just about if it is. But I do think I can get across and not be too confrontational and not say anything stupid myself and just make the situation worse. So if you are ignorant, that's probably your best response if you're not saying anything. There are sometimes when you do try and educate and just explain what they've, if it is saying, what is that, and explaining what you had to go through and why you've had to have it. It may help, and it may educate that one person, and they'll be a bit more understanding of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We we speak to quite a lot of people who have stoma surgery for all sorts of reasons. But generally people
Mm.
who've come from the IBD background, their story tends to be, if they had the option, was that they put off having stoma surgery for a really long time, sometimes years, and have lots of other surgeries in the middle
Mm.
and obviously on all of the different medications, etc.,
Yeah,
because they're frightened of what might happen if they have the surgery, or what life might be like with a bag. And then everyone,
yeah,
certainly that I've spoken to thus far, has always said, my life has been infinitely better since I've had the bag, and I wish I hadn't put it off for so long. So I wonder, what would
yeah,
you say to someone who's currently suffering with severe IBD symptoms but are quite scared to go through the surgery, so they're putting it off? What would your advice be?
yeah. Because that was my thinking as well. Like, try and push back the surgery as much as possible. Try and try out the medication as much as possible. Because I think having not having surgery is obviously a better option. Like, most of the times, not having surgery, try and control it with medication is more likely than not going to be a better outcome, because if you're not going through this massive surgery, not removing an organ essentially. So it is. I guess that's sort of where I was thinking. And obviously, then you have to live with the bag as well. So you've got that consequence of the surgery.
Mm.
There's loads of different impacts, but I think what a lot it's hard to tell because it's hindsight, isn't it? It's just hindsight is such a great
Yeah.
thing all the time. So I guess my advice, it's difficult. It really is a difficult one. So I wouldn't like say to someone, you should have stoma surgery, because there is always a chance that maybe the medication does work. Um, I think if you are that, like, I do get people messaging me all the time about this,
Yeah.
that they are really ill, they're in hospital, the medication isn't working, and they're scared of surgery. Um, I think it's also that distinction between surgery and medication. That it's just with surgery, it's just that the treatment that worked for me and that worked for many other people who have had stoma surgery. It's just that treatment that worked for me. So I just see it as another treatment option instead of a separate surgery or separate
Mm.
route of treatment. Even though it is, it's just that surgery was the treatment that worked, whereas for those patient X, the first medication they try, they may be on it for the rest of their life, and it may work for them. Whereas for someone else, like me and many others, you have to go through multiple medications and then some surgeries, and eventually you'll find what works for you, because there is no cure, unfortunately. Obviously, the science is unbelievable, but in the grand scheme of things, we know nothing. Not nothing, but we know very
Mm.
little. We know very, very little. So it's a really difficult one. Um, I think it's just about staying positive and just trying to work out what works for you is really what it is. And for me, it was the surgery.
Thank you for being so honest with that and showing both sides. I never looked at surgery as just another treatment option. I think that's a really interesting take on it and a great way to
Yeah.
look at it. So thank you. Do you
Yeah.
experience any of your symptoms still, or did surgery kind of remove most of them for you?
Most of them, yeah, it did remove, because I feel removing the cause of the problem. I do still have a bit of my colon, the end, like the rectum, which is just the
Hmm.
last bit. Um, I haven't had any like flare ups, like the same symptoms. Because if my rectum's still there, I can still experience colitis
Yeah.
symptoms. Luckily, I haven't. It's not in the same environment. You're not having things going through it all the time. And most of the symptoms have gone, which I had before, but it's obviously a bit different now. Like with the stoma bag, I've had a few what's called blockages. So obviously your digestive system isn't as, what's the word? It doesn't flow as easily. It's a little bit weak. It's not weaker, but it is a little bit weaker than the average
Hmm.
person. So some foods are harder to digest, and obviously that can cause what's called blockages. Whereas, as the word does say, your digestive system can get blocked, and that can be quite painful, which I've had unfortunately quite a few times. But luckily, it has passed. People who have have to have surgery for that. If it does cause an obstruction, it can be quite dangerous, like life-threatening dangerous. So I've had that unfortunately quite a few times. But you just learn what foods work for you, and also just to chew your food a lot is the best way actually to digest
Yeah.
food. I think there's also, there's different kind of symptoms with the stoma bag, which is just the main message I'm trying to get at. But my symptoms before, I'm not on any medications at the moment, so there isn't any signs of symptoms to control. So yeah, it's different, but the symptoms I had before, it's definitely not the same. Definitely not.
So I wanted to end on what's going on in your life now and what's next. So you're 18. Are you wrapping up school? Have you got uni on the cards? Are you going to work? I'm just interested to hear what's next for you.
Yeah. So I finished school last year. I'm now on a year out, and I'm planning to go to university in September to study medicine. Actually, I
Oh,
got a couple of offers last week.
oh, congratulations.
Um,
Do you know where you're going to go?
yeah. I don't know yet. I'm still deciding. So I've got a few options, luckily.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
university is hopefully the next step. I'm also, it's sort of going off topic, but I'm thinking about having the reversal
Are
surgery
you?
for the stoma bag. So possibly closing the chapter with the stoma bag, going to university. I guess the reason is I just want to see, it's that what if question. What if my life without the stoma bag is better? And obviously I'm young, I'm as healthy as I can be at the moment, so I've got the best chance of it working. I just feel like I want to have a go. I've got the year out at the moment, which is why I took it. So possibly if that reversal does work, then happy days. But if not, I can go back to where I am now. I do want to try, going back to normal. Getting the plumbing back together. But yeah, I guess that's the next steps for me, and carrying on sharing my journey on Instagram and social media as well. So yeah,
Well,
that's my next
A,
steps.
thank you for sharing everything that you do because untold numbers of people are benefiting from it. So thank you. And good luck
Yeah,
with the reversal surgery. Do you know when that might happen?
I think it's in April. I'm just waiting for a
See.
date.
Okay, well, good luck.
So yeah, soon.
Everything crossed. But either way, you're going to smash it at university. And I can't believe you're doing medicine. How wonderful. Love that.
Yeah, I know. I guess it has sort of influenced it why I wanted to do it. So
Oh, that's amazing.
I guess yeah, that's what happened.
Oh, Ollie, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful to speak to you. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me as well.
Thanks for being
It's great to
here.
be on.
Speak soon. Have you seen the new Ostique skins yet? Ostique skins are revolutionary ostomy pouch covers that were created to make the wearer feel confident, sexy and powerful in all of life's moments. From moments of intimacy to lounging by the pool, conquering a workout or simply heading out to lunch, skins have you covered. Even better, they're compatible with all major colostomy and ileostomy bags. Ostique skins are available in a range of colours and skin tones, and they're made from a revolutionary material that's completely waterproof, high quality, soft and comfortable. Skins are easy to use, even with reduced dexterity, and they work with both closed and drainable bags. Plus, skins are also environmentally friendly and vegan. There are 4 bundles available to buy now, and you can also purchase individual skins. Head to ostique.co.uk to find out more.